The Emoji Movie needs no introduction. Out of all the animated movies that I ever reviewed, or will review on my channel, the Emoji Movie is not only one of the most hated theatrical animated movies of all time, it's also one of the most hated animated movies of all time. So, if you've been following my content for a while, you may have remembered that back during 2017, I said in a few videos at the time that I was going to be doing a rant on this movie, because back in the day, I watched this movie through a camera-recorded copy of the movie, and I didn't go back to rewatch the movie since then because of how much I really didn't like the movie back then. I was trying to do a workaround for this by retooling it into a best and worst animated movies of 2017 list, but due to complications and copyright issues, I ended up having to scrap that list entirely. Until recently, when me and my friend group watched the movie together in a call. Full disclosure, it was through a randomized wheel of names that contained this movie, and my feelings toward this movie had only soured over time. You may know about how I feel about 2017's catalog of animated movies. Even when you take the direct-to-DVD movies out of the equation, 2017 is still one of the worst years for animated movies, period. Some people like to point the fingers and say that 2013 was worse, but at least with 2013, its worst movies were just boring and forgettable at worst, with only one of them being really that bad. 2017, in contrast, has movies like The Star or Rock Dog, which are forgettable and boring at worst, but also movies like Sahara, The Boss Baby, Leap, and Spark a Space Tale, which have egregious moments under the bland and forgettable surface. And then there's the Emoji Movie, which is a movie that is so bad that it made people question the integrity of movies in general, or how they'd be like going forward. And all I'll say right now in regards to Sony Pictures Animation is that thank God a year after this movie was released, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was released and revived interest in animation, and we got some of the most beloved animated movies of all time in its wake, because I honestly don't know where Sony or the animation industry would be right now had it not been for that one movie. Because, I am just gonna say this right now, I don't usually go with the popular opinion regarding any animated show or movie. I usually wait until I get done scripting the review, or maybe even recording the lines before I watch other people's videos on said show or movie, especially in regards to Little Brown Bear and Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, where the general consensus with them is that they are hot garbage. But no, this movie truly is that awful, and looking back in hindsight, this movie truly did deserve all of the backlash that it got. It didn't deserve the title of the absolute worst movie of all time. I mean, I reviewed two other movies in specific that are worse than this one by a country mile, a super progressive movie and Ivan the Incredible, but it does deserve to be considered as one of the worst animated movies of all time, because it shows where the industry could have gone if they didn't get their act together. So, what is the premise of this movie? Well, that's very simple actually. Just take the Lego Movie, Inside Out, and Wreck-It Ralph and push them together into one giant mismatch, but take out all the well thought out writing and put absolutely no care into it whatsoever. And once you know about the production of this movie in particular, you'd basically realize what this movie's main priority is. This movie holds the record as the fastest production of any animated movie ever created because of the timely nature of smartphones in particular. Because once the movie would potentially be polished up and done in the oven, the trend of emojis in smartphones would basically be considered as a fad, so there was absolutely no time for them to go back and make any adjustments to the movie, and what we ended up being left with as a result is a movie that doesn't even want to be a movie in the slightest. So the movie revolves around an emoji named Gene. He's this very special emoji because he has this one quirk that separates himself from everyone else in Textopolis, and that he's an emoji that has more than one kind of emotion to himself, but he basically gets shunned from society because he has more than one kind of expression on his face, and so because of this, the villain of the movie, Smiler, basically plans on killing him, and that's literally most of what we get out of this movie. The rest of it is basically just the characters trying to find a way to get into the cloud by using Dropbox. But all of these convoluted things keep on getting in the way so that they could basically stall the film from doing that. So, you know how I described Lewis and the Aliens as Wild Goose Chase the movie? Because that movie was just about the characters running around. The Emoji movie is on the exact same level, but in an entirely different kind of fashion. Instead of being called the Emoji movie, this movie should be called the Ad movie, because that's all that this movie exists to be. The film's entire journey revolves around the characters trying to get to Dropbox so that they could find their way to get into the cloud. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, this movie constantly likes to waste its valuable time on the characters pretty much doing nothing. Pretty standard for any of the awful animated movies that I reviewed for Sean's yearly reviews so far. Most of the time that is wasted in particular is not spent on the aspects that actually matter to the film, like the human character named Alex, whose subplot revolves around him trying to talk to his crush named Addie McAllister. The movie finds it more important to basically shill their products instead of actually telling a story or putting focus on any sort of consistency. And the worst part about it is that some of these moments didn't even need to be in the movie because Gene, Jailbreak, and High Five could have simply walked around these apps and the exact same mission would have been accomplished. And they don't further the story or even have a purpose to be here at all. The Just Dance and Spotify sequences could have been cut out entirely and you would have missed nothing. Well, actually, you would have missed out on some cringe-inducing moments, but it would have been a good thing to miss out on those moments entirely. They actually played the song Nay Nay. I'm not even kidding. And even when they're not pointless, the movie just stops what it's doing entirely just to advertise their products, especially in the Candy Crush sequence. And just like in Wreck-It Ralph, the other apps on the phone act as their own different world, but the thing is, what worked about Wreck-It Ralph is that Ralph traveling to other dimensions served a purpose to the story. Ralph wanted to earn a gold medal so that he could live in the penthouse with everyone else who resides in his game, so he went to another game so he could get that medal, but said medal gets trapped in Sugar Rush as a result, and Ralph needs to get it back. Heck, even in Ralph Breaks the Internet, they at least told a story revolving around the internet. They didn't have the characters go into said products as an excuse to advertise them, even in the Oh My Disney sequence. That sequence was a thing because Ralph forced Vanellope to go there while he started becoming busy becoming an influencer. And most of the other instances of them throwing product placements in all at once was only in the sequence where Ralph and Vanellope first arrived into the internet. The Emoji movie is just an advertisement. Nothing more, nothing less. And with the Lego movie, that film was not an advertisement towards Legos. It used Legos as a springboard to tell its story. This movie barely even tries to prove the general public wrong, when all expectations were stacked against it. So, when the movie's concept first came into fruition, it was basically mocked and ridiculed, because the premise of the film was about a bunch of faces on your phone that acted as the protagonists. Sounds like a stupid concept, right? Well, then again, a movie about a rat learning to become a chef, a dumb panda voiced by Jack Black, and the Lego movie proved that a stupid premise can work if you actually put in the effort to establish your world building, give us interesting characters, and tell a story. None of these things are what the Emoji movie does at all. For a movie that is supposed to be set in a smartphone, this movie has no clue how smartphones work at all. Like, even when ignoring the fact that this movie's world building makes zero sense, and them basically saving the phone meant nothing in the end because Alex was gonna get a new phone within the coming years or months. There are multiple sequences in this movie that, if you've ever had a phone in your life, the more you'd realize that the filmmakers did no research whatsoever. And I don't care if this is an animated movie and that I'm just taking it too seriously. Like, if this movie was just a comedy movie with a wacky premise, like Storks, I wouldn't care. But given that this movie is about smartphones, I had to take it as seriously as possible. For one thing, Alex just has this piracy app on his phone that he basically disguised to look like something else entirely. The app is entirely overrun with spam, viruses, and internet trolls running the joint. But do you guys even know what the definition of piracy even means? And given that we live in a world where sailing the 7 seas is essential to watching shows and movies, especially given that companies would take said show off of that particular streaming service, that just made this sequence age poorly. Also, did you guys not do any sort of research at all? Or were you too busy advertising Candy Crush, Just Dance, Spotify, and YouTube to notice where you messed up? You're not able to disguise an app in order for it to to look like another one at all, the most that you're able to do is uninstall it or mute the notifications on the app. Otherwise, what the app actually is just gonna be in plain view. And the ending of this movie is just so stupid. Forget phones. Did you guys not do any sort of research regarding any sort of technology at all? So Alex is at this phone repair shop and is about to delete everything off the phone, when Gene ends up saving the day by being his normal self by using more than one expression regarding the emoji he is. Alex ends up unplugging the USB cord that was deleting everything, and it just restores everything on the phone. That's not how that works, movie! When you turn something off while it's either updating or in the process of factory resetting, that's just gonna do damage to the phone. Also, there's literally a factory reset button on the phone itself that Alex could use. And even when disregarding this movie's misunderstanding of how technology works, the writing in this movie is terrible. Never have I seen an animated movie where the entire journey that the characters go on was 100% useless at the end of the day. The characters literally go to Dropbox, but it ended up being a complete waste of time because Gene ends up getting captured, and High Five and Jailbreak have to find a way to get back there. Literally nothing was accomplished. At least with the MLPFIM movie, which came out the same year by the way, the main six came across a bunch of new characters that ends up helping them in the climax after Twilight got captured, and I am still baffled that IGN literally thinks that the MLPFIM movie is worse than the Emoji movie. And like I mentioned before, whenever the Emoji movie is not showing how incompetent that it is with its misunderstanding about technology, and a journey that indicates that this movie shouldn't have existed, the movie has no original bone in its body at all. I pointed out this issue in some of the other movies that I tackled, but the Emoji movie is the final boss of generic animated movies. There's not a single moment in this film where it feels like this movie came up with its own ideas, but instead, they decided to take those ideas, change up certain ideas, and claim them as their own. This movie has the hero's journey of figuring out that the main character is way more than what society views him as. That's the Lego Movie and Wreck-It Ralph. The movie follows this human character that the emojis care about. That's Inside Out. And society looks down upon the main character because he doesn't have a one-track mind. That's Smurfs the Lost Village. And this even goes down to the little things. The bots that Smiler uses looks exactly like the micromanagers from the Lego Movie. And Jailbreak is just wild style, but she is way less likable, and her relationship with Gene can only be described as incredibly forced. Because Jailbreak has not shown any sort of positive qualities to really deserve Gene falling in love with her, especially after a sequence early on in the movie where she makes an extremely misogynistic comment about men, saying that all men take the credit for what women do. And she also says that all women's roles in life is to be pretty princesses who act as objects of affection for men, despite the fact that Smiler and Gene's mom are both women. And also, this is a very outdated way of thinking, given that this is no longer the 1950s. This movie came out in 2017, when we had several shows or movies that had its female characters be more than just objects. And not helping Jailbreak in any way whatsoever is that she's voiced by the same voice actress who voiced Sam Sparks in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, who is an actual character. And that's another thing about this movie too. Just like Ivan the Incredible, Monster Family, and a super progressive movie, this film is very mean-spirited. And the film gets its viewers every reason in the world to hate all of its characters. The only character in this movie, ironically enough, that I don't hate is the main character Gene. But that's not much of a compliment because he's very uninteresting and generic, and that's saying a lot given that he's literally voiced by TJ Miller. And all I was wondering while I was watching this movie is, who am I supposed to be rooting for exactly? I mean, High Five is very annoying in this movie, and he does nothing in the film but put Gene and Jailbreak in harm's way, so Jailbreak is very justified in getting angry with him, but I can't side with Jailbreak either because of the misogynistic comments that she makes throughout the film. Also, Smiler is justified in getting mad at Gene because he, High Five, and Jailbreak continually make things worse for Alex, but I can't side with her either because she's literally wanting to murder Gene when she could literally just fire him. And all of the citizens of Textopolis are literally complicit in it because she says out loud that she's going to kill Gene, and none of them raise any sort of eyebrows to this. I mean, I know that Smiler is the villain of the film, so I can't get too mad at her for this, but the problem is that even some of those who we are supposed to root for are not sympathetic at all. Jean's parents are literally wanting to lock their own son away because they, and I quote, want to keep him safe. And by the way, their one joke of not showing any sort of emotions was done better by ModPie and MLPFIM, because here's a fun fact, ModPie is written as an actual character! Most of the characters that we see in this movie are written as nothing but cheap jokes. The Patrick Stewart poop emoji just exists in this movie to do nothing but tell poop jokes, and I mean that literally. And that's another thing too. On top of the fact that this movie is Chicken Little, Ivan the Incredible, Monster Family, and a super progressive movie levels of unpleasant, this movie is not funny at all whatsoever. Granted, the humor in Monster Family and a super progressive movie are much worse, because I can at least tell the jokes that this movie is trying to go for, but still though, this movie is incredibly unfunny. Every single joke that this movie tries to do results in them doing a very bad pun. The beginning of this movie has them doing bad puns in rapid fire succession. The shrimp emoji and his friends are gonna be on the Barbie, and he has an Australian accent. Because get it? Shrimp on the Barbie is an Australian thing! And the Patrick Stewart poop is constantly telling poop jokes directly or indirectly in every single sequence he's in. One moment has him almost saying the S word, because get it? He's literally a turd! And also, way to tell poop jokes during a very serious moment, movie. And whenever the movie is not telling bad puns, they are constantly going all like, how do you do, fellow kids? While also doing and saying things that are straight up insulting to the teenagers that this was probably aiming for. Straight up saying out the gate that their attention spans get shorter and shorter, and also portraying them as being glued to their phone all the time. Most schools, from what I know, don't even allow you to have your phone out during class, and I can confirm that this is true because I was in high school during the exact same time that this movie was released. If you were to hypothetically have your phone out in class, the teacher would confiscate it and hold on to it until the end of class. And for a long time, I was discouraged from bringing my phone to school at all until I was 17 years old. But I mostly just kept my phone in my pocket a lot of the time. Honestly, the only aspect of this movie that I do like is the animation. Because as opposed to Ivan the Incredible or a super progressive movie, the movie is actually pleasant to look at, both when it comes to its characters as well as how the world is designed. Even though most of the character designs look copy and paste, since emojis are made of simple shapes. To be honest, I am absolutely thankful that after this movie was released, we got Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because I could only imagine where the industry would be now if things didn't step up and fast. And now this movie sits in the pit of obscurity where it belongs. And to make sure that it stays in obscurity, let us never speak of this movie again, unless I either bring it up as an example in a video, or I rank this movie alongside some of the other disasters that I reviewed in this series. Also, fun fact, I hear that because Jordan Peele hated the fact that he was offered the role of Poop, he thought that his career in acting was eventually going to pivot, which inspired him to make Get Out, Nope, and Us, three really well-acclaimed horror films, with one of them being the first horror movies to win an Oscar since Silence of the Lambs. It's wild what this movie can eventually inspire.
Coming up next, it's...
Meow!
Really?